All right, this is it. Last drink of week 15, our last normal week before we enter the slightly strange 3-week final stretch. That said, this matchup is certainly a strange matchup, both in terms of the teams involved and the combination of their drinks. To really drive that weirdness home, Miami's representative of this matchup is actually 2 drinks in one. It's the Miami Vice. Ah, the Miami Vice. Truly the epitome of the dark age of cocktails. In case you are unfamiliar, the Miami Vice consists of a frozen pina colada and a frozen strawberry daiquiri, often with a very clear dividing line between the 2 red and white slushes. The drink originated somewhere in Miami, somewhere in the 1980s, and because this is Miami in the 80s, nobody can really remember the specifics. The main point of contention with this drink is whether its origin predates the TV show of the same name. From what I've seen, it seems like the drink itself likely predates the TV show, but may have acquired its name later. Now, with this being a layered frozen drink from the dark age of cocktails, you're probably expecting me to go on a little rant about how much I hate and despise the Miami Vice, but no. See, the Miami Vice knows what it is. This isn't a classic cocktail corrupted by cheap shortcuts or a corporate creation designed to push some new bottle of garbage. No, see, the Miami Vice is the pure spirit of 80s Miami in a glass. Sure, visually it's way over the top, but at its core, it's chill and easy. This is a slushy drink, so it's not actually 2 full cocktails combined in one glass. It's 2 trips to the soda fountain combined in one glass. And then when you look at the flavors as well, there's nothing out of place or extraneous there. It's just strawberry, pineapple, and coconut. Pure tropical bliss. However, there's nothing tropical about Pittsburgh's representative, the Iron Curtain. Yeah, so now you see why I said this was a weird mashup. Now, the Iron Curtain is obviously what the Steelers' Steel Curtain defense of the 70s took their name from, but the drink itself is actually a shot, consisting of vodka and Jaegermeister. I could not find an origin for this drink, but the spec certainly lives up to the name, 2 ingredients that both conjure up images of Eastern Europe in the middle of the Cold War. This was also a tricky drink because I really wanted this to be in a Nick and Nora glass to kind of stay more true to the Iron Curtain's origins as a shot, but I just absolutely could not get these ratios to balance with such a small volume. So as a result, I had to bump up to a coupe glass, but that does give us enough room for our final spec of 1.5 ounces of white rum. This is our main base for the drink. Obviously, this is coming from the Miami Vice with that, pina colada and strawberry daiquiri. Nothing crazy here. 3/4 of an ounce of Jaegermeister. So, of course, this is obviously coming over from that Iron Curtain. And this is the real wild card. I have no idea how this Jaeger is going to play with all of these tropical flavors that we're about to introduce from Miami. I'm gonna find out one way or the other, though. 1/2 ounce of Malibu. So this is, white rum with coconut liqueur in it. This, obviously, the original pina colada calls for cream of coconut, but I ended up using Malibu, and then later on you'll see the coconut syrup, because that gave me more flexibility with ratios than the cream of coconut would have. So we're trading off a bit of that texture in order to get more flexibility in terms of our, classic base 3 ratios that mainly booze and sugar are the 2 that this gives us that cream of coconut wouldn't give us. 3/4 of an ounce of lime juice. So this is, this is our acid in the drink, or one of our main acids. Pineapple juice lends a bit of acid too, but just not as much as the lime juice. Lime juice has about 5 times the acid as pineapple juice. Speaking of, 1/2 ounce of pineapple juice. Just, slowly making our way through this bottle. I'm doing as much as I can. And then finally, a little extra sweetness. 1/4 ounce of our coconut syrup. Part of this was just because I wanted an excuse to use this coconut syrup again. I bought the whole bottle. I'm going to use the whole bottle. But it is also very useful to put in a syrup when you're trying to balance ratios, because the sugar concentration is just so much higher than what you get in liqueurs or fruit. gonna shake that up. And then, like I mentioned, we are going to strain that into our coupe glass. It's not the most appealing color, but it's also not the worst color I've seen. All right, so we got our Iron Curtain plus our Miami Vice. So it only felt fitting to call this the Iron Vice. Give it a try. A nice little head on it from the pineapple juice. Whoa! 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 Oh my god. I'm having a fucking brain blast moment right now. Holy. Whoa, that is cool. Yes! Oh my god. I was so worried with this drink. I did not know how this was going to turn out when I put Jaeger with pineapple and coconut. Like, that is such an out there combination. I had no idea how it was going to turn out. I did consult the spreadsheets. I consulted my books. I made sure I had the ratios of everything balanced. That's a big part of why this is in a coupe glass and not in a Nicanora, because I had to get the ratios balanced. But the flavors I didn't know. Oh my god, the flavors are incredible. That, whoa. Ooh. Oh, it's like tiki in the best and weirdest way possible. Holy shit, let me try another sip of this. Oh, yes. Oh my god. Okay, so the pineapple and the coconut do such an interesting little bit of a keto with the Jaegermeister, where they take what is, typically a very kind of like harsh and dominant flavor, that licorice kind of flavor that you get off of that Jaegermeister, and they kind of just like sweep out the harshness and then spin that flavor into a complementary flavor with that classic sort of like pina colada, pineapple coconut blend. And it just, it works so well, but in such a funky, unique way. Okay, so like first off, I will say, like, okay, starting at the fundamentals, the ratios of this, like I said, I made sure they were balanced. But there's always a bit of, uncertainty when you make a drink for the first time. Even if you do the math and you make sure it all checks out, there's always a little bit of like, but is it actually gonna feel right, or is something gonna be off? This is spot on. It is the perfect amount of sweetness, the perfect amount of acid. It still feels like the mouthfeel is quite pleasant, both I think from, the pineapple juice, but I think also the syrups and, sort of all the liqueurs we've gotten here. It's just everything you want in a mouthfeel, it's very well balanced. Legitimately blown away. I think the color is probably the one thing like that's not stand out about this drink. But this is kind of the opposite of the Atlanta versus Tampa Bay matchup. Like the Atlanta versus Tampa Bay one, that Grok, I just had nothing to break down or really analyze there. This one, I've got too much to analyze. There's so many interesting little things happening in this drink, from the flavor to the mouthfeel, and I just like, I want to get into all of it, and I'm having to like make a conscious effort to slow myself down and like pick one to go into, because all of it is just overwhelming my brain right now. It's so interesting. It's so cool. Holy shit, I'm fired up. I think that's like perhaps the most impressive thing about this drink is how much it neutralizes the harshness of the Jaeger, but not the flavor of it, right? Like so many people, I think, have this idea in their head, likely because of how they've consumed Jaeger in the past, that it is this like very kind of like harsh kind of liqueur, which is absolutely valid. But this, there's so many other, like that, it really is. It's that tandem of the pineapple and the coconut that both bring a sweetness to the drink, which obviously will help offset some of the harshness of that Jaeger. But there's something in the bite of the acid and the sort of like creaminess of the coconut, right? Where like we're not using a real cream of coconut here. I will say, I know the ratios of everything are perfect, and I balance them with these ingredients in mind. I am now very curious to see if you could replicate this kind of effect with a cream of coconut. That is now something I'm very interested in. If you could take like a Coco Lopez and get a similar kind of effect in this drink, I do think it would be a fundamentally different drink, but it is certainly added to my list of like things to try because that does intrigue me. But anyways, the bite of the pineapple juice and the sort of creaminess of the coconut, they really like, that is just the best way I can describe it. They sort of sweep out the harshness of the Jaegermeister and just let those sort of licorice notes and all of the other kind of like subtle botanicals that are hidden in here that you don't typically get when you're just drinking it neat or in other places where the Jaeger is really allowed to dominate. All of those other little notes start coming out as well. And they play so well because they add just that bit of curve to like that classic pineapple and coconut flavor is like such a tropical staple, right? Like there's a reason everybody fucking loves a pina colada, right? Like it is such a good flavor combination. There's a reason everybody loves it. And this, like what the Jaeger does in this drink is it doesn't ruin that classic combination at all. It just adds a funky little bit of twist onto the end of it. It really is sort of more on the back end. But you get it on the front end as well. It's not even just like a late arriving note that is this sort of like final modifier to give you something to think on as it sort of sits in your mouth. It really is. It's present throughout the entire evolution of this drink, but it never oversteps its bound. It never gets too strong or takes over this drink. It is always very much playing a supporting role to that sort of main flavor combo here. God damn, this is so cool. Yeah, oh God. This blew me away. This exceeded my wildest expectation. I could not have dreamed of this drink working as well as it does. I thought for sure this was gonna be a gag drink. I like, again, legitimately, put my whole bussy into this drink. I made sure that the recipe was balanced, that at the very least, the fundamentals were going to be solid. I could not have dreamed of this flavor combination working out as well as it did. Absolutely shocked in the best possible way. I think like it would be interesting to see cream of coconut. You know, obviously it changes up the fundamentals a lot. That'll change up the mouthfeel of this drink a lot. But I think it could be a very interesting kind of variant on this. I would also be interested to see, I think using like an aged rum in this might actually be called for. Obviously this white rum is very much staying out of the way, right? This white rum really doesn't bring anything to the drink, but it's not interfering in that main sort of flavor combination. I think bringing an aged rum in would be very interesting because I think it would accentuate the sort of licorice note of the Jaegermeister. I think adding in that little bit of extra baking spice, just that additional slight modifier to that classic, you know, pineapple and coconut spec. Ooh, I think it almost rounds out the full evolution. I'm very curious about that now. We'll see. I'm actually oh, that's a shame. I'm just out of my aged rum. I might have to go get a bottle just to try this drink with an aged rum in it when I go to take the pretty picture of it, because man, this has just blown me away. I am absolutely in awe. Well, a shockingly incredible drink. Hopefully these teams can put on a surprisingly good game for us on Monday night. There's only one way to find out, and that's in the simulation. All right, the Steelers get the ball first, and if you're a Dolphins fan, just skip ahead to the end now. There's nothing for you to see here. Okay, maybe that's not entirely true. On the Steelers' opening drive, 3rd and 9, Rodgers tosses up a prayer into the back corner of the end zone, and it's picked off by pursuing Minkah Fitzpatrick. However, the Dolphins lose 15 yards and punt it back to Pittsburgh, and this time Rodgers doesn't miss as he fires a dart to Calvin Austin for a toe-tapping 14-yard touchdown. A failed fourth down conversion sees the Steelers with the ball in great field position. A few plays later, they're at the 1-yard line where Jaylen Warren dives up the middle for the score. It's more the same in the second quarter as a defensive penalty puts Pittsburgh at the 1, and this time it's Connor Hayward taking the fullback dive in for the touchdown. The Steelers defense just continues to absolutely smother the Dolphins. Meanwhile, Miami's defense finally gets a stop on third down as Rodgers' deep shot is broken up. But Boswell drills the 48-yarder, making this a 4-score game before we even hit halftime. But wait, there's more. Steelers drive into the red zone, and this time Rodgers takes it in himself for a 7-yard touchdown. With 5 seconds left, the Dolphins heave up a Hail Mary from the 50, but as has been the pattern this game, it's picked off, sending us into halftime with the Steelers leading 31-0. The second half is technically better for the Dolphins, as the third quarter is scoreless, and their defense finally gets a sack on third down. Despite the sack pushing them back 10 yards, a 42-yarder is still well within Boswell's range, scoring the final points of the game. Steelers win in a shutout, 34-0. Ouch. Now look, I do think the Steelers are a better team than the Dolphins, but not by this much. This game is really a combination of best case scenario for the Steelers defense and worst case for the Dolphins offense. I believe the Steelers got 8 sacks in this game. That would be their most sacks in a game all season. That said, Tua is a very sackable quarterback, so it's possible. Speaking of Tua, he was pretty ineffective this game, though honestly, Aaron wasn't much better. Neither QB cracked 200 yards, both completed only 12 passes, plus 1 interception for each. The sad part is with how much both of these quarterbacks have been struggling this season, neither of these performances would be their worst this year. Rodgers has had multiple games with fewer than 150 passing yards this season, while Tua threw for only 100 yards and 3 interceptions against Cleveland. The key to Pittsburgh's victory really lies in the defense and in the running backs. Jaylen Warren had a very impressive 108 yards and 1 touchdown, averaging a very healthy 6 yards per carry. Meanwhile, the Dolphins just couldn't get Achane going on the ground, averaging only 3 yards per attempt across his 12 attempts. Also, shout out to Connor Hayward for his 1-yard touchdown rush. All of the receivers suffered in this game due to that rough quarterback play. DK Metcalf had the most yards out of all of them with only 63, 34 of which came on his very first catch of the game. Calvin Austin caught the only passing touchdown of the game, and the Dolphins tried to get Achane going in the screen game with 4 receptions, but those only amounted to 39 total yards. In addition to his touchdown run, Connor Hayward also brought in a single 23-yard catch, which would be his 3rd reception of the season and more than double his total receiving yards this year. These offenses both had far more success in the Monte Carlo sim, with both quarterbacks averaging over 200 yards. For context, Tua is averaging only 190 passing yards per game this season, and Aaron Rodgers is right behind him at 189.6. The running backs looked significantly different from their Madden counterparts. Achane had a very strong game with 75 rushing yards, while Gainwell actually outrushed Warren 60-44. The receivers also benefited from the boosted QB stats, with the biggest beneficiaries being Jalen Waddle, who averaged 5.5 catches for 54 yards, and the Steelers' tight ends, who combined for 70 yards on 7 catches. A very spread out score distribution, one which gives Miami a slightly better chance of shutting out the Steelers than the other way around. Indeed, the most common outcome is also a Dolphins victory, 21-14. Averaging out all 10,000 games brings the margin down a bit, but it's still all Miami, 21-19. Now, it's another relatively static week in the standings. The only new development here is the Browns taking their rightful place at the bottom of the AFC North. As a result, I think now is a good time to take a look at who's in the simulated playoffs versus the real-world playoff race. Me being late on putting out this video actually works in my favor, since most of the Week 14 games are finished as of recording this. In the AFC, we have the Bengals, Dolphins, Chiefs, and Jaguars leading their divisions, and then the Ravens, Broncos, and Chargers in the wildcard spots. In reality, it's the Broncos, Patriots, Jaguars, and Steelers leading their divisions, with the Bills, Chargers, and Colts/Texans in the wild card. So it correctly predicted 3 of the 7 spots. Not great, but not horrible. Over in the NFC, it's the Lions, Eagles, 49ers, and Buccaneers leading their simulated divisions, with the Packers, Falcons, and Seahawks waiting in the wild card. In reality, it's the Packers, Eagles, Rams, and Buccaneers leading their divisions, and the Seahawks, 49ers, and Bears holding on to those wild card spots. So a much better 5 out of 7, plus there's a possibility that it improves to 6 out of 7 with a Lions win and Bears loss in Week 15. Do you agree with the simulations, or do you envision a different future? I'm looking forward to hearing your thoughts down in the comments. As a reminder, our drink for this matchup is the Iron Vice. a surprisingly delicious twist on the classic pina colada flavor combo. If you make it, please let me know what you think, and I'd love to hear your suggestions for what drink should be your team's representative. Stay curious, stay thirsty, and I'll see you in the next one.